Exclusive contract novel of Feilu Fiction Network. Genshin Impact. Popularize the spirit, and I become the third throne. Lin Fan went through the Genshin Impact world and experienced the feeling of being caught by Ying. Subsequently, it bound to the elf popularization system and embarked on a journey of elves flashing through the 7 kingdoms of Tivat. Ying. The best partner is Paimon, and the strongest partner is EP1-10. Why is the flower healing ring that can bring sunny days divine? Zhongli. In terms of universal rationality, the Earth Dragon, referring to the leading mole, is indeed useful, but I think Master Who would prefer it. Ray Movie. Morabek, my dim sum is missing. Do you have any clue? Pulling out the knife. Naxida. The King Kong Scarlet will protect everyone. After years of popularizing elves, when Lin Fan suddenly looked back, he found that he had already ascended to the divine realm. The era of the first and second thrones has passed. Now, it is the era of the third throne. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. Crossing Tivat, first encountering Ying in Paimon. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Mond, Falling Star Valley. On the southeast side of Wangfeng Mountain, stretching for several kilometers on a golden beach. Amidst the surging blue tide, some marine creatures are brought to the bare beach. A blonde girl and a wet young man with short hair sat on the beach reef. The two of them were playing with the grilled fish on the campfire in front of them while chatting. A small humanoid creature wearing a crown and a starry cloak was floating in mid-air on the side. Did you order it? Ying added a few pieces of wood to the campfire and asked the person in front of her. She used to fish as usual. I didn't expect to catch 2 people in a short period of time. The sea is really amazing. Feeling the warmth of the flames, Lin Fan said with a smile, it's much better. Thank you for saving me. There was both a sense of relief and a hint of excitement in his smile. Because he did not expect that a fish could go through the world of Genshin Impact. The big one and the small two in front of us are exactly one of the main characters in the Genshin Impact world, the traveler named Ying. And the world's best companion and emergency food, Paimon. So, which country are you from? And why did you fall into the water? Paimon, floating in mid-air, touched his chin and asked with some suspicion. For some reason, she instinctively felt a sense of distrust towards this newly emerged guy. Like Ying, I also come from outside the world. Lin Fan did not choose to conceal it, but smiled and revealed the fact that he was an outsider. The reason why he would tell this news is that outsiders are not uncommon in the world of Genshin Impact. When Ying embarked on his journey, he was already the 4th descendant. This does not include Ying's own brother, who is known as the Prince by the Abyss cult. Everyone is descended, so naturally there is nothing to hide. I heard Lin Fan say that he is also an outsider. Ying's eyes suddenly lit up and she quickly spoke up, asking, did you encounter the obstruction of the gods? At first, she and her brother fled the original world, preparing to find a new home. So the two of them boarded a meteorite and drifted into this world. But when she was awakened by her brother from the meteorite, it was already many years ago. And for some unknown reason. As soon as her brother woke her up, he hurriedly prepared to take her out of this world. Until a strange deity stopped them, her brother's whereabouts were unknown after a major battle. She also fell into a deep sleep until she woke up 2 months ago, and also lost some memories. Now I suddenly heard Lin Fan say that he is also an outsider. She was eager to know if the other party had also encountered the same situation as her at the time. I didn't encounter any obstruction from the gods, Lin Fan shook his head and said softly. Listening to this answer, Ying's originally hopeful eyes suddenly darkened. She was originally thinking of obtaining some information about that deity from Lin Fan's mouth. Now it seems that this idea has fallen through. But I have a little understanding of the deity you are talking about. The maintainer named Genli belongs to the Sky Island camp and holds a position above the ruling power of the 7 earthly ones. While Lin Fan was speaking these words, he was also attentively observing the changes in Paimeng's expression. This is mainly because the speculation about the identity of Paimon in previous lives can be roughly divided into 3 categories. One is the theory of the embodiment of heavenly principles, the second is the theory of time governing, and the third is the theory of the goddess of emptiness and moon. Among these 3 statements, except for the first one which is very dangerous for him, the other 2 are all okay. So he was planning to test it out. Let's see what kind of reaction Paimon would have when he heard about the maintainer of heavenly principles and Sky Island. Just there seems to be something wrong with the situation. He observed for a while, and Paimon seemed to have no other reaction except for a slight confusion. I remember that the unfamiliar deity was indeed the maintainer of the self-proclaimed, heavenly principle. What do you mean by the Sky Island and the 7 rulers of the world you're talking about? Due to being asleep for a long time, Ying was not familiar with the so-called Sky Island and the 7 rulers of the world. So when she heard that the maintainer of the heavenly principle seemed to be involved, she immediately became interested. I know this. Paimeng's eyes lit up after holding it for a while, and he quickly spoke up. The legend of Sky Island is that it is the dwelling place of the gods, and the 7 rulers of the mortal world are now the gods of the 7 kingdoms of the mortal world. These gods respectively possess the power of the 7 elements of water, fire, grass, thunder, wind, rock, and ice in the world. Paimeng spoke as he looked up at Lin Fan with his head held high, as if a child was showing off. Paimeng is right, Lin Fan chuckled lightly and gave him a thumbs up. Based on the recent probing, the speculation that Paimeng is the embodiment of heavenly principles has been temporarily ruled out. So he temporarily let go of his guard against Paimon. After listening to Paimeng's answer, Ying's face became slightly ugly. She originally thought that all she needed was to deal with a deity. Unexpectedly, this deity still had subordinates, and at once there were 7 powerful deities. And maybe there will be other gods on that so-called Sky Island. Will she still have a chance to find her brother in this way? Lin Fan saw what she was thinking and smiled, saying, "There's no need to worry about the 7 rulers in this world. Nowadays, the ice god in winter has raised the banner of rebellion against heavenly principles, and other deities are also facing various problems. Instead of worrying that the 7 gods will harm you, it's better to think about how to use the power of these gods to achieve your goals." This is not that he is comforting Ying, but the fact is that the situation is indeed so. The wind god of fishing, the retired rock god, the autistic thunder god, and the young grass god. The water god with psychological problems, the fire god with little news, and the ice god with a rebellious body. Now, each god has their own troubles, and the 7 gods also have their own small plans. Even if I have free time, I may not be able to help the maintainers of Tianli deal with Ying. The god of ice is actually rebelling against the heavenly principle. Ying's face was full of shock, and she said with some disbelief. She never expected that these so-called 7 rulers of the world would think of betraying the principles of heaven. Isn't Tianli the leader of these people? She felt a bit confused in her mind, unable to grasp the twists and turns in it for a moment. No wonder fools have been acting frequently in various countries recently. After listening to these words, Paimeng also showed a hint of enlightenment. But how did you know all this? Paimeng looked at Lin Fan in confusion and asked. She was curious, why would someone from outside the world be so familiar with Tivat? However, Lin Fan only chuckled lightly and did not provide an explanation. There are some things that can be said and some things that cannot be said, and he is still very clear about this truth. Alright, Paimon, everyone has their own secret. Ying suppressed the swirling thoughts in her heart, preventing Paimeng from continuing to inquire, and then asked Lin Fan. Do you have any plans next? Upon hearing this statement, The smile on Lin Fan's face disappeared, and his eyebrows furrowed slightly. He didn't answer for a moment. Chapter 2. Elf Popularization System, Leader Big Yalu. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Lin Fan frowned at Ying's question. It is because this world not only has various cursed monsters, such as the dungeons and abyss mages, but also there are also various elemental creatures containing extraordinary powers, as well as various engineering machinery left behind by the destroyed ancient country. It is indeed difficult for ordinary people to ensure their life's safety in the face of these things. Not to mention the foolish people led by the Ice Queen, as well as various forces from other countries. Just as Lin Fan was pondering whether to find a place to live, a series of cold mechanical sounds suddenly rang out in my mind. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully binding to the Elf Popularization System. The beginner gift package has been distributed to the system space, please check it carefully, the task has been released, please inform the host on your own. Listening to the sudden sound, Lin Fan's eyes couldn't help but flash with excitement. Previously, he had thought of hiding behind the scenes and profiting from information that outsiders did not know. After all, he didn't have any cheats or divine eyes before. It may not be possible to use elemental power freely like Ying, without the need for divine eyes. Being caught up in such matters that concern the gods of various countries is not much different from jumping into a minefield. But now with the system, things will become different. System, open the task interface. Lin Fan silently gave instructions in his mind. Compared to the beginner gift package, he still cares more about what tasks the system provides. If it were some prank missions, then he would be numb. Unique task. The popularity of elves in this world has reached 100%, and the current popularity is 0%. Regional task. The popularity of the Mond region's elves has reached 100%, and the current popularity is 0%. Regional task. The popularity of the Paimon in the Liyue region has reached 100%, and the current popularity is 0%. Regional task. Repetitive task. For each completed Paimon popularization, the host will earn 10.5000 BP points based on the popularized Paimon. Note: BP can purchase items in the mall, please browse on your own. After reading the tasks released by the system, Lin Fan showed a hint of clarity. The previously suspended heart has also been released. The task of the system is neither difficult nor difficult, it is just to promote elves on the continent of Tivat. If it's really difficult, it should be 7 regional tasks. The 7 regional tasks correspond to the 7 earthly countries. This also means that if he wants to receive these task rewards, he cannot stay in the same country all the time. But for him, this is not a bad thing either. Being able to personally travel to Tivat, witness various people and events, and perform tasks is like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. System, activate beginner gift pack. After taking a brief glance at the system mall, Lin Fan shifted his attention to the beginner gift package. To be honest, he is still very curious about what exactly is in the beginner gift package. Ding! Beginner gift pack open. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the Elf Ball X10, Elf Guide X1, BP.50, and randomly starting 1 elf, please draw it yourself. Looking at the things opened in the beginner's gift package, Lin Fan felt a toothache. This doesn't feel like the gift package is too shabby. But the random initial spirit given by the gift package was a little worried. With his non-chieftain luck as a guaranteed person, he was not surprised by a random green caterpillar. I hope luck won't be too bad, Lin Fan murmured in his heart and activated the initial sprite randomization. Random selection of initial sprites. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining the leader, Big-Toothed Beaver. Looking at the system's extraction results, Lin Fan couldn't help but be taken aback, followed by a burst of excitement. Although there was no such thing as a quasi-god elf at the beginning as imagined. But Yalu, a very practical initial elf, is already very good for him. Not to mention that the big-toothed fox he drew also had the prefix leader. You should know that sprites with the prefix leader must have 3 full individual values. Although it is not yet clear which 3 individual values are involved. But it's definitely not a problem to deal with the average Chio people and slime. Did you think of anything happy? Watching Lin Fan's expression change, Ying beside her curiously asked. A smile appeared on Lin Fan's face and he said, "My partner has also awakened, so I am quite happy." As he spoke, he flipped his palm and a red and white Paimon ball appeared in his hand. Looking at the red and white ball in Lin Fan's hand, Ying and Paimon both had a puzzled expression on their faces. "Your partner, is it a ball?" Paimon flew up close and asked in confusion after a few glances. Lin Fan chuckled lightly and said, "This ball is just a place where my friends sleep. Come out, big Yalu." During his speech, he lightly pressed the red and white ball in the middle, and a red light fell in front of everyone. Wait for the red light to dissipate. A large brown beaver with 2 prominent front teeth appeared in front of everyone. Okay. What a big beaver. Paimon looked at the huge beaver in front of him and let out an exclamation of surprise. Indeed, it is larger than an ordinary beaver, and this beaver doesn't seem weak. Listening to Paimon's exclamation of surprise, Ying nodded with deep empathy and said. Although her former power was sealed by the gods, she can hardly exert it now. But she could still feel that the beaver in front of her was not simple. This is one of my companions, named Yalu, who is a kind of elf. Lin Fan explained as he took out the elf guidebook from the gift package and scanned it at Yalu. Drip big-toothed beaver, round mouse Paimon, has robust front teeth to bite on trees and rocks, and builds nests by the water to live. Attribute. General, race value. 250, gender. Male. Feature. Simplicity, attacks that ignore changes in opponent's abilities. Move. Cry, impact, genetic move. Roll, round. Looking at the data displayed in the guidebook, Lin Fan is still quite satisfied. Although individual values, levels, effort values, and other data are not displayed, it is still possible to view a skill group. I have heard of some elves formed by condensing elements. But it's the first time I've seen an animal spirit like this beaver. Paimon flew over to Yalu's side, carefully observed it, and then scratched his head and said. I'll get used to it when you see more. After teasing Paimon with a smile, Lin Fan turned to look at Ying with bright eyes and said. Ying, do you want to have such an elf? This statement came out. With an incredulous expression on her face, Ying asked, Can I also have this kind of elf? Isn't this kind of elf your companion? Do you think there are many of these elves? Lin Fan's words were really beyond her expectations. Most of her strength has not been restored now, if there could be such an elf to assist. Then whatever she does afterwards will be smoother. But the problem is, isn't this kind of elf that can be called a companion supposed to be very rare? Chapter 3. The first popularization of elves, Yingdi Ibu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Regarding Ying's confusion, Lin Fan chuckled lightly and said, These elves all have ethnic groups. If you also want to have elf companions, I can help you get one. You will embark on a journey to find your brother next. It will be easier to have a companion to help. He had already understood before that there were 2 ways for the system to popularize sprites. One way is to use the currency of this world, which is the mora, or something of equal value to extract. Divided into 3 levels. Ordinary, precious, and gorgeous. The cost of mora varies for each level of extraction. Normally, you only need 100,000 moles to draw once, but the ones you usually draw are house worms and house birds. Precious requires 1 million mora to be extracted once, and the extracted spirits are generally quite powerful. The most expensive luxury requires 10 million mora to be drawn once, with a chance to draw a quasi-god elf. Mora can also be exchanged for BP points in the mall, but the ratio is 10,000.1. And the system provides another way to popularize sprites. He uses BP points to purchase lottery draws in the mall, and then allows others to draw. The BP points spent are also classified into 3 levels: 10, 100, and 1000. In his view, this method is actually a perpetual motion machine, which can accelerate the progress of elf popularization to the greatest extent. For example, if he spends 10 BP to have someone else draw once, it would be based on the repetitive tasks published by the system. No matter what kind of elf others are offering, he is guaranteed to gain 10 BP points and make a steady profit without losing. But this seemingly permanent method has a fatal drawback. As long as he uses BP points to purchase the number of lucky draws, it doesn't matter whether he draws or someone else draws. The extracted elf tribe will gradually appear in the area where this elf is extracted. And the elves extracted through Mora will not experience this situation. This also means that if you don't expect to walk on the ground with a divine spirit, divine beasts are not as good as dogs. He must grasp the degree well and try not to use BP to extract the highest level elves. So he thought about helping Ying draw the lowest level elf and trying to see what the effect was. By the way, observe what impact the emergence of this new species, the elves, will have. This is how he can formulate the subsequent plan for popularizing elves. After listening to Lin Fan's words, Ying said with a hint of joy and unease on her face. Can I really do it? Would this not be suitable? Ying, don't be polite to this guy, Paimon said while shaking his little finger. She could tell that Lin Fan, this mysterious guy, was not short of money at first glance. Paimon is right, we are friends, there's no need to be so polite, Lin Fan chuckled lightly. And don't forget, you saved me before. After speaking, he bought a regular level lottery opportunity with 10 BP in the system. After purchasing the lottery tickets, a large red and white egg twisting machine slowly appeared in front of the 3 people. Watching the red and white fairy balls in the egg twisting machine, Ying and Paimon were both stunned. Okay. There are so many of those balls. Paimon's eyes lit up as he looked at the egg twisting machine, almost writing the 2 words he wanted on his face. Ying, all you need to do is pull this joystick. As for what kind of elf you can draw, it depends on your luck. Lin Fan demonstrated to Ying how to operate the egg twisting machine for extracting elves while speaking. He is also quite curious about what the initial sprite of Ying will draw. Is that right? Ying followed Lin Fan's instructions and gently pulled the lever of the egg twisting machine. Immediately, many fairy balls in the egg twisting machine flipped up and down. After a moment, the egg twisting machine stopped stirring and a sprite ball rolled out from the outlet of the egg twisting machine. Let's take a look and see who your first partner is. Looking at the somewhat nervous screen, Lin Fan picked up the elf ball and handed it to her, saying. After taking a deep breath, Ying mustered the courage to press the button in the middle of the Pokemon ball. A red light flashed past, and a little fox-shaped creature appeared in front of the 3 of them. What a lovely elf! Paimon's eyes lit up as he looked at the newly emerged elf. What kind of elf is this? It looks a bit like a fox, Ying asked Lin Fan curiously. She was originally thinking about whether she could have a stronger fighting spirit. In this way, she can face many dangers more easily on her subsequent journey to find her brother. But looking at this elf's small size, I'm afraid its combat power won't be strong enough. This somewhat disappointed her. Fortunately, this elf was very cute, so she was relieved. Ying, your luck is really good, Lin Fan couldn't help but sigh as he looked at the silly and cute Ibu. A regular level draw can draw IB, and Ying's luck is really not average. Look at other people's original spirit, and then look at their big fangs, which pierced the heart of old iron. If it weren't for my big-toothed fox with a leader prefix, I would probably have been left with nothing left of this Ibu second scum. This elf's name is IB. Despite its small size, its strength is not simple. Just take this and scan it to see. After Lin Fan finished speaking, he took out the elf guidebook that came with the purchase lottery opportunity and handed it to Ying. This statement came out. Ying and Paimon were stunned. Because no matter what they think, this little fox named IB doesn't look very strong. But unfortunately, Lin Fan confidently said that this little fox is not easy. Ying Jiang took the elf guidebook handed over by Lin Fan with suspicion. And under the guidance of Lin Fan, I learned how to use this very advanced thing. Just scan it like this, Ying said as she took the elf guidebook and scanned Ibu. Ibu, evolutionary Pokémon. They are precious elves who will change their form and abilities during evolution to adapt to harsh environments. Attribute. General, race value. 325, gender. Female. Feature. Danger prediction, can detect the opponent's dangerous moves. Move. Desire, impact, tail shake, help, inherited move. Yawning. What do these characteristics and moves mean? Ying looked at this long string of information and asked with some confusion. The characteristic is. Lin Fan immediately explained to the two of them as he listened to Ying's puzzled words. After nearly half an hour of answering, Ying and Paimon finally understood what kind of ability the inconspicuous little speck in front of them had. Good traveler, this elf is a very precious one. I didn't expect this little guy to be quite powerful. After listening to Lin Fan's detailed explanation, Paimon flew to Ying's side and said happily. Lin Fan, thank you. Ying also solemnly thanked Lin Fan. Lin Fan chuckled and shook his head, saying, it's just a small matter, don't worry. And I forgot to tell you that elves like IB have multiple evolutionary forms. To put it as an analogy, it's like the Qiuqiu people will have different elements of the Qiuqiu king. The mysteries are left for you to discover on your own. He also wants to know. Will Ibrahimovic, who arrived at Tivat, evolve into a brand new Ibrahimovic capable of simultaneously controlling multiple elemental powers? P.S. The new book set sail, please ask for flowers, tickets, and tips. Thank you, handsome and wealthy readers. Chapter 4. Advancing towards Mond, catching the wind of strangers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When Lin Fan mentioned that Ibrahimovic had different evolutionary forms, Ying was also somewhat surprised. She has seen many monsters like the Qiuqiu people during her wandering time. Although I haven't seen the called King Qiuqiu. But the Qiuqiu people who use the power of elements such as wind, fire, and ice have seen many of them. When I think about Ibrahimovic, I may also be able to control these elemental powers in the future. Ying couldn't help but show a genuine smile from her heart. Let's get along well in the future, Ibrahimovic. As Ying spoke, she held Ibrahimovic in her arms and rubbed his furry little head. Ibu also rubbed her hand very affectionately. Looking at the scene of love in front of him, Lin Fan also looked at the system prompt with a smile on his face. Ding! Host successfully completed a Pokémon popularization, promoting Pokémon. IB. Congratulations to the host for completing the repetitive task and obtaining 30 points of BP, note. As this purchase is for BP, the Ibrahimovic ethnic group will begin to appear in the Mond region. Watching the BP balance in the system change from 40 to 70, Lin Fan nodded in satisfaction. Sure enough, it's exactly what he thought before. If we don't consider the proliferation of elves in Tivat, this approach is the fastest. As for the Ibrahimovic ethnic group, he plans to observe later before deciding whether to take action. Lin Fan, what does this little guy usually eat? Looking at Ibu in Ying's arms, Paimon suddenly thought of a very serious problem and quickly asked. If Ibrahimovic, like a human, wants to have a big meal, maybe the food expenses she can receive will decrease in the future. Elves are not picky eaters, they can eat fruits and human food. Don't worry about eating, Paimon. After Ying gains some fame, you will definitely be guests from various countries. Lin Fan just glanced at Paimon and knew what was on his mind. He immediately laughed and joked. Although behind the screen, it will become a guest of honor for various countries. But it's normal to be pursued as a suspect before becoming a guest of honor, right? Let's head towards the city after lunch. It's not a problem to stay in the wilderness all the time. Could you please send a guide for me then? After recalling the matter, Lin Fan put away the smile on his face and said solemnly to Chow Paimon. Reality is not a game, and he cannot guarantee that he will find the way to Mond 100%. After all, it has been 2 months since Ying woke up, wandering around for so long without finding a way to the city. This alone is enough to illustrate that in reality, countries like Mond have extraordinary geographical boundaries. Just leave the matter of leading the way to me with peace of mind. Upon hearing Lin Fan talk about the guide, Paimon couldn't help but lean his hands on his hips and straighten his chest. She originally thought that Lin Fan knew everything, but she didn't expect that the other person would also not know the way. It seems that she is better at being a guide. Immediately, 3 people and 2 beasts divided up the 2 large grilled fish. After eating and resting for a while, the 3 of them sat in the Yalu brand bus and headed towards Mond under the guidance of Paimon. Thanks to Lin Fan, this big-toothed fox is the leader. The body size of the large-toothed civet is much larger than that of an ordinary adult, and it is about the same height. This can be used as a means of transportation, greatly saving everyone's physical energy consumption when crossing mountains and valleys. After a long journey of 1.5 days. Finally, under the guidance of Paimon, everyone walked out of the lush and endless forest. It's really oppressive to move forward in the forest these past few days. No wonder you haven't walked out for so long, Ying. Thanks to Paimon being the guide. Lin Fan stood on the edge of the cliff, gazing at the huge lake in the distant basin, and couldn't help but feel a little emotional. They walked from the coast to Xinglua Lake for a full day and a half. This is still with Paimon as the guide and Yalu as the walking tool. After this long journey, only one thought remained in his mind. The screen/air in the game, as well as the characters, are really superhumans. I didn't do anything else. Paimon felt a little shy as he listened to Lin Fan's praise. By the way, Ying, have you seen the statue in the center of the distant lake? As if remembering something, Paimon flew to Ying's side and pointed to the distance, speaking up. I saw it, what's wrong? Ying responded in confusion as she distributed wild fruits to everyone. She didn't understand why Paimon suddenly said this. The statues of gods are scattered across the continent, symbolizing the 7 gods' protection of the world. Among the 7 deities, the deity Babatos of Mond controls the power of the wind element. It is rumored that devout people may receive blessings from the gods when praying to the deity, thereby gaining the ability to control elemental power. Since Lin Fan said that the 7 gods are not the one you are looking for, why not try to get a response from the wind element? At this moment, Paimon changed his usual playful demeanor and explained to Ying with great solemnity. I am from outside the world, can I really receive the blessings of local gods? After listening to Paimon's words, Ying pondered for a while and said with some uncertainty. Let's give it a try. If you want to fight against the maintainer of heavenly principle, it's still too difficult just with your current strength. If you can receive the blessings of the wind god and the ability to control the power of wind elements, it will surely make your journey smoother. Listening to their discussion, Lin Fan smiled meaningfully and said. If people in this world want to use elemental power, except for gods, demons, monsters, and elemental creatures, they all need to rely on the eye of God. Kuing/Kong has never had the eye of God, but can simultaneously use various elemental powers. This has led some people to speculate whether Paimon may be an external magical organ of Ying/Kong. He happened to take this opportunity to observe carefully this time. Under the persuasion of Lin Fan and Paimon, Ying also made up her mind. Immediately, the group of people rode on the big-toothed fox and headed towards the huge lake in the distant basin. Half an hour later. With the excellent swimming skills of the big-toothed fox, the group easily reached the small island in the center of the lake. Just like me, put your hand on the statue and close your eyes to feel it. As soon as he arrived on the island, Paimon couldn't wait to fly to the statue and say how to pray to Ying. Let's give it a try, Lin Fan also encouraged with a smile on his face. At the same time, he kept his eyes fixed on Paimon, wanting to see if he would find anything later. Without hesitation, Ying stepped forward and placed her hand on the statue, while closing her eyes. As soon as her hand touched the statue, a gentle breeze brushed against everyone's cheeks. At the same time, the surface of the statue shines brightly. A cluster of energy condensed by the power of wind elements flew out of the statue and lightly landed on Ying. P.S. The new book set sail, please ask for flowers, tickets, and tips. Thank you, handsome and wealthy readers. Chapter 5. Why is the gap between outsiders? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Seeing this scene, Lin Fan was slightly surprised. He had been paying attention to Paimon just now, but he didn't notice anything unusual about him. Ying still gained the power of wind elements by just touching the statue, which made him a little curious. Is it true that Paimon is hiding too deep to be seen on the surface? Or is it true that elemental power and abyssal power are actually two sides of the same energy? Otherwise, it's really hard to explain why Ying easily gained elemental power. But soon he suppressed these thoughts and smiled, saying, "Congratulations on getting the approval of the wind god. With the help of this wind element power, I believe you can find your brother faster." Paimon also smiled and said, "Hehe, as soon as I arrived at Mond, I received recognition from the gods. This is a good omen. People in this world don't want to control elemental power as easily as you do." Listening to their words, Ying silently opened her eyes, with an imperceptible hint of suspicion flashing in them. This power. She looked at her hand in a daze and couldn't help but murmur softly. For some reason, she felt very familiar with this so-called elemental power. There is a feeling of the former power returning. But Tivat's elemental power is not exactly the same as her former power. This made her somewhat puzzled. What exactly is the situation? It's really a bit cult. Don't think so much now, when you have gone through enough journeys, you will naturally understand. And now you have truly become a user of elemental power. Seeing Ying's confusion, Lin Fan smiled and spoke up. The entanglement between the power of the abyss and the power of the elements can be explained for several days. And there are too many characters and events involved in it, which is not something that Ying can understand now. So he doesn't intend to say such things now. Lin Fan is right. Now that you can freely use the power of wind elements is something worth celebrating. By the way, Lin Fan, you are also an outsider. Would you like to try it out too? Paimon also noticed that Ying's emotions were not right and took over the conversation, shifting the topic to Lin Fan. In fact, she is also very curious. As an outsider, Ying can easily gain the power of wind elements. Can Lin Fan also easily obtain wind elemental power? Yes, Lin Fan, do you want to give it a try? Listening to the words of persuasion from the two, Ying also suppressed the swirling thoughts. Then he looked at Lin Fan enthusiastically and said, "Then I give it a try." Lin Fan scratched his head and walked up to the statue as they talked about it. Although there are elves protecting us now, ultimately it's not that we are strong ourselves. This makes him still pursue strength. If you could control elemental power like Ying, you would also have strong combat power. But he has no idea whether he can obtain elemental power like a screen. "Let the wind guide you," Lin Fan murmured softly. He placed his hand on the statue and closed his eyes, just like before the screen. "I am constantly silently reciting in my heart. Babatos, do something serious." 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Time passed by little, but the statue remained unresponsive. The atmosphere in front of the statue froze for a moment. Until a few birds flew over a few people's heads. A few mocking screams were made to break the awkward atmosphere. "It seems like I've thought too much." Lin Fan opened his eyes and shook his head with a light smile. Fortunately, he didn't have much hope of obtaining elemental power, and at this point, even if not too disappointed. But when he sees Babatos in the future, he will have to give him a hand. Well, Lin Fan, don't be discouraged. Maybe the wind element is not suitable for you. When you encounter statues from other countries in the future, you may try again and it might work. Paimon didn't expect such a situation to occur either. He awkwardly pointed his finger and said with a hint of guilt. She really didn't expect it. As outsiders, Lin Fan and Ying surprisingly presented two completely different results. Paimon is right, there will be more opportunities in the future, Ying also comforted. Although we only spent less than 2 days together. But Lin Fan's helpful personality, coupled with his identity as an outsider, make her naturally closer to Lin Fan. At this moment, she gained strength, but Lin Fan did not, which inevitably made her feel a bit guilty. "It's okay, you don't have to worry. I have a backup hidden energy source." Feeling the warmth in their words, Lin Fan smiled and waved his hand, saying, "Unable to obtain elemental power, that is, unable to become stronger through normal means. But don't forget, he's a coward. In the future, there will be opportunities to find ways to make oneself stronger, which is just a matter of effort." As the three of them spoke, a ripple rippled in the lake near the island. A group of jelly-like things emerged from the water and bounced towards a few people. "It's Shui Slim, Ying, Lin Fan, you need to be careful." Watching these unwelcome guests, Paimon immediately flew higher and reminded the two of them at the same time. After hearing Paimon's reminder, Ying bent down and picked up a tree stick, putting on a combat posture. Ibrahimovic, who had been held in her arms all along, also jumped down and prepared for the attack. "Slim, I just happened to test the combat power of Big-Toothed Beaver. Big-Toothed Beaver, use rounding and rolling to defeat this group of slimes." Seeing the group of water slimes getting closer and closer, Lin Fan immediately gave instructions to the nearby Big-Toothed Fox. As the words fell, Yalu, who was still feeling drowsy, suddenly woke up. The massive body curled up into a ball and spun towards the slime group. Pop 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 pop. As soon as it made contact, the Big-Toothed Fox, with its huge size, easily crushed several water slimes into splashes. Immediately after, Yalu rushed forward like a road roller. In a moment, the remaining few water slimes were all sent back into the lake. The entire battle process can be described as a physical crushing, and Ying and Paimon had already come to an end before they could fully recover. "Well done, Yalu. When it's time for Mond to treat you to a big meal." Lin Fan nodded in satisfaction at the combat effectiveness displayed by the Big-Toothed Fox. Although there is a reason why slime is very garbage. But being able to easily solve these slimes also proves that the combat effectiveness of the Big-Toothed Beaver is still good. Yalu is so strong. Surprisingly, he solved this group of slimes so quickly. After Paimon regained his senses, he said somewhat incredulously. It was the first time she had seen an animal so easily defeat elemental creatures. The elf in Lin Fan's mouth seems to be a bit extraordinary. Is this an elf? Ying muttered to herself as she looked at Yalu, who had calmed down again. The recent battle gave her a vague understanding of the power of elves. This also made her think that if Ibrahimovic grows up, will he also have super strong strength. As the few people spoke, the entire starry lake suddenly experienced a strong wind, and the sky suddenly darkened. P.S. The new book set sail, please ask for flowers, tickets, and tips. Thank you, handsome and wealthy readers. Chapter 6. Guardians of the Four Winds, Dragons Tearing Apart the Sky. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The originally cloudless blue sky turned into a scene of dark clouds covering the top in the blink of an eye. Looking at this apocalyptic scene, the three of them were also startled. What's going on here? Ying struggled to resist the strong wind, with a worried expression on her face. At the same time, he quickly retrieved Ibrahimovic back into his arms, afraid that the little one would be blown away by the strong wind. What a strong wind! Paimon tightly grasped Ying, so as not to be blown away by the strong wind. But under the increasingly fierce wind, both of them were somewhat shaky. Lin Fan was also a bit startled and quickly spoke up. First, hide behind the statue. This should be due to the presence of powerful elemental creatures, be careful not to be affected. After recovering from the sudden shock, he had already guessed what was going on. This must have been one of the Four Winds Guardians, an elemental creature known as the Wind Demon Dragon by the Mond people at this time. Although he knew there might be such a period. But the appearance of the Wind Demon Dragon would cause such a terrifying celestial phenomenon, which greatly exceeded his expectations. This also made him more convinced that reality cannot be viewed based on the common sense in the game. Immediately, the three of them helped each other and hid behind the statue. At the same time, Lin Fan also let the Yalu block in front of everyone. Together with the deity, they formed an encirclement of several people, greatly slowing down the impact of the strong wind. To achieve this level, this elemental creature is probably too strong. Paimon, who was tired and paralyzed, sat on Ying's lap and looked at the dark sky with lingering fear. It's really strong. If this elemental creature launches an attack on us, it may be more ominous than good. Ying leaned against the statue, comforting Ibu's emotions while speaking anxiously. Lin Fan observed the sky while comforting, "Don't worry, this elemental creature isn't coming towards us. As long as we don't provoke each other, there shouldn't be any problem." The words have just finished. A deep thunderous roar could be heard from the sky covered in dark clouds. A blue dragon with 6 wings broke through the clouds. Carrying a strong wind, it swept through the falling star valley, howling towards the distance with shadows that covered the sky and sun. This scene stunned Ying and Paimon, and Lin Fan's eyelids twitched wildly. After the strong wind subsides and the sky gradually returns to clear, Ying looked at the direction in which the giant dragon had disappeared and asked Paimon incredulously, "Is there a dragon in this world?" She is an outsider, so naturally she knows about creatures like dragons. But she didn't expect that this world was already dangerous enough, with monsters and elemental creatures. Surprisingly, there are creatures like dragons. You should know that dragons are usually synonymous with strength, which makes her sweat for people in this world. I seem to have a creature like a dragon in my memory, Paimon scratched his head and said with some confidence. But I remember it was like lizards and sandworms, not like the dragon I just saw. By the way, didn't Lin Fan Gang just say that the dragon was an elemental creature? Do you know anything? Paimon looked at Lin Fan with a puzzled expression as he spoke. Now she can be certain that there is definitely an unknown secret about this guy. Ying also looked curiously at Lin Fan, hoping to get some information from him. After pondering for a while, Lin Fan spoke up and said, "The dragon just now was an elemental creature condensed from wind elements. And the origin of this dragon is not simple, so you probably have to deal with it later. He is quite familiar with the wind demon dragon, but just now the opponent's body size was indeed a bit astonishing. A gentle flap of the 6 wings can stir up a strong wind, and the wind pressure carried by it can crush a large area of trees. It can only be said that he truly deserves to be the initial companion of advanced elemental creatures and wind gods." Upon hearing Lin Fan's words, Paimon and Ying became even more puzzled. "Lin Fan, do you know the dragon just now?" Ying asked in great confusion. "And you said we would deal with that dragon, why is that?" Both are outsiders, but Lin Fan seems to be very familiar with everything about Tivat. This made her feel ashamed and curious about Lin Fan's true identity and past. Seeing Ying and Paimon both looking at him with curious eyes, Lin Fan thought for a moment and said. The dragon just now was named Tulin, and now the Mond people generally refer to it as the Split Sky Magic Dragon, the Tearing Sky Dragon, and the Wind Magic Dragon. Except for Mond's current controller, the Knights of the West Wind. Many people probably don't know that Tulin was once one of Mond's four winds guardians. The reason why you will deal with Tulin later on is because Tulin is a relative or companion of the wind god. If Ying wants to see the wind god and get his support, she will definitely help solve the problem with the wind demon dragon. When it comes to the matter of Tevelin, Lin Fan couldn't help but feel a little sad. In order for Mond to step forward, he was contaminated by the power of the abyss and woke up from a deep sleep, his original home still missing. Unfortunately, he encountered the abyss cult and was misunderstood by the Mond people who were guarding him. Most people find it difficult to bear this series of things, let alone pure elemental creatures in their hearts. After listening to Lin Fan's words, Ying and Paimon both felt that they had broadened their horizons and knowledge. They thought this dragon was just a particularly powerful elemental creature. Unexpectedly, this dragon named Tevelin was actually a relative and companion of the wind god. And it also has intricate connections with the city of Mond that they are about to go to. At the same time, this also allowed the two to truly see how profound Lin Fan's knowledge is. Even the locals of Mond may not know the news, but he can keep it to himself. I've decided, I'll give you a nickname. Paimon shook his finger and pondered. Since you know so much, then call yourself a jack of all trades. Now she has to admit that Lin Fan does understand more in certain aspects than she does. Compared to Paimon, who was full of enthusiasm and calculated small things, Ying was somewhat discouraged. Helping to solve this dragon. With my current strength, it's probably not possible. Is there no other way to see the wind god? She had originally planned to make contact with the 7 rulers of the world as Lin Fan suggested. Besides seeing if we can get the support of these gods. I also want to see if these gods are really preparing to rebel against the heavenly principle as Lin Fan said. But now the first step of meeting the wind god has stumped her. Letting her deal with a colossal creature like Tevelin is somewhat too much of a way of looking up to her now. Seeing that Ying was somewhat worried, Lin Fan shook his head and said. Don't worry, naturally you won't be able to deal with Tulin alone. If I'm not mistaken, the Knights of the West Wind are also preparing to resolve the issue of Tulin. You just need to collaborate directly with the members of the Westwind Knights Order when the time comes. He can understand Ying's concern. After all, not everyone knows the future like him. However, this information gap advantage is only temporary. He cannot say for sure what the future direction of the world will become with the addition of such a variable. P.S. The new book set sail, please ask for flowers, tickets, and tips. Thank you, handsome and wealthy readers. Chapter 7. The efficiency of Babatos in handling matters. I serve spicy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After listening to Lin Fan's words, Ying's suspended heart also calmed down. As a native of Mond or the current manager of Mond, the strength of the Shifeng Knights should not be inferior, right? If she can cooperate with these people, she still has some confidence in facing Tevelin. Paimon, how long will it take to get to Mond City from here? Lin Fan looked up at the restored azure sky, estimated the time, and then asked Paimon. If it's still far from Mond, then find a place to camp early and continue on the road tomorrow. If the road ahead has just been undamaged, you only need to walk for half a day to reach Mond City. Upon reflection, Paimon gave a response, but there was a rare hesitation on his face. It's just that Tulin seemed to be heading towards Mond just now. If we move forward now, we might encounter that big guy ahead. Although I know that Tulin may not necessarily be a bad dragon. But she still felt a bit uneasy about this guy with such a huge body size. If possible, she still hopes to avoid Tulin as much as possible to avoid encountering him head-on. Otherwise, with her small physique, she probably wouldn't be enough to fill the gaps between Tevelin's teeth. Since that's the case, let's first find a place to camp around Xinglua Lake. I've been tired all day today. Take a good night off and continue heading towards Mond tomorrow. Ying, Paimon, what do you think? Lin Fan gave his own suggestion after a moment of contemplation. Because if nothing unexpected happens, Babatos will meet with Tuolin ahead. If they continue to move forward at this time, they are afraid that they will disturb these two people as before. If Tevelin loses his wits and suffocates them, what would happen? So he decided to hold his ground, and it wouldn't take him less than a day and a half. I agree. Upon hearing this proposal, Paimon agreed without even thinking about it. Okay, it's okay to be a day late. Ying also agreed with this. Three individuals with vastly different personalities quickly reached a consensus on this matter, which is rare. Although it was not explicitly stated, everyone understood in their hearts. All of this is just because the sense of oppression that Tevelin brought before was too strong. There was nothing to say overnight. The next day, after eating grilled fish from Xinglua Lake, the three of them continued on their journey. Although it has been a night since the invasion of the demon dragon. But the three of them were still slightly cautious as they advanced, afraid of any accidents. Since leaving the Starfall Lake area and stepping into the Whispering Forest. Apart from the rustling sound of walking and the rustling sound of leaves being blown by the wind in their ears. The entire forest feels as if it is dead silent. This made the very sensitive Paimon first notice something was wrong. I don't know why, ever since I walked into the forest, I feel so suppressed. And it's so strange that there's not even any movement of animals in such a big forest. Paimon said to Chao Ying and Lin Fan with some uncertainty, while also looking around. She can guarantee this time, it's not that she's too suspicious. Upon hearing these words, Lin Fan couldn't help but let out a thud in his heart and quickly spoke up, be careful. Maybe Paimon was right about it. If it weren't for Paimon mentioning it, he wouldn't have noticed that the forest was actually quiet. This is really abnormal. And there are only two reasons that can cause this situation. Either the animals in the forest have died, or there are powerful creatures occupying the forest. From the current situation, there is no doubt that it is the second option. Think about it again. When Tevelin flew this way yesterday, Lin Fan felt a tingling sensation on his scalp. However, it's not yet time for him to react. A few people just turned a corner and saw a chilling scene all over. Just because on the forest clearing in front of a few people. A blue dragon was crawling, and a powerful pressure escaped from its body. This dragon is not another dragon, it is Tevelin who made the three of them temporarily give up their plan to move forward yesterday. And in front of the giant dragon head of Tuolin, there stood a person dressed in emerald green clothing. In just a moment, Lin Fan regained his senses and quickly took advantage of the fact that Tevelin had not yet noticed. Pulling up Ying and Paimon, who were still in a daze, they quickly hid behind the nearest big tree. I'm really impressed. Babatos, can you be a bit efficient in your work? It's been all night now, and the matter hasn't been resolved yet. You two can just leave it here to reminisce. After hiding behind the tree, Lin Fan breathed a sigh of relief, but at the same time, he could not help roast. He really didn't expect that people would have such bad luck. I really didn't expect that Babatos's work efficiency would be so low. Yesterday, I deliberately postponed my trip for fear of disturbing Babatos to treat Tevelin. I didn't expect to be met by them in the end. Lin Fan, is that person talking to Tevelin? After regaining her senses, Ying asked in an incredulous low voice, thinking about the scene she had seen before. She saw for the first time that someone could communicate with dragons or elemental creatures. Yes, let's stay quiet for now, be careful not to disturb the other party. If Tevelin and others go berserk, it would be troublesome. After Lin Fan poked his head out to check the situation, he instructed Chao Ying and Paimon. However, his words had just finished. Originally very gentle, Tuolin seemed to feel the power of disgust approaching, or perhaps sensing something. Suddenly, He raised his huge head and let out a deafening roar, then his 6 wings flapped. At the same time as a gust of strong wind blew up, it rushed up into the sky and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The young man who had stood in front of Tevelin before showed a hint of astonishment on his face. What about a Twalin that big of me? This is only halfway through the treatment, why did he just run away in a blink of an eye? However, the youth did not dwell on this issue. Through the news brought by the gentle breeze, he already knew that several outsiders had broken into this forest. Perhaps it was for this reason that Twalin was frightened and fled. The young man glanced at a big tree at the corner of the road and disappeared in the blink of an eye. And the 3 people hiding behind the tree watched this scene. Except for Lin Fan, the other 2 are somewhat unclear. Tuolin and that strange person are both missing. Just now, I almost thought I was going to be eaten by Tevelin. It was really close. Paimon flew out from behind the tree and looked around with lingering fear, saying, if they had known they would have met Tevelin, they should have been on their way a day later. There's a familiar feeling on that dragon. And who exactly is that strange person who can talk to dragons? Ying looked at the sky where Tevelin had disappeared and murmured thoughtfully to herself. She hasn't felt the distance before. But after this close encounter, she could feel a faint sense of familiarity on Tevelin. This made her feel very confused. P.S. The new book set sail, please ask for flowers, tickets, and tips. Thank you, handsome and wealthy readers. Chapter 8. The Conjecture of Abyssal Power and Luminous Power. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Listening to Ying's murmurs, Lin Fan suddenly felt a tingling sensation in his heart, and his scalp was also tingling. Because he was well aware that Tevelin could not have any intersection with Ying. If you insist on saying anything familiar to Ying about Tevelin's body, there is only one possibility, the power of the Abyss. Today's Twalin is being eroded and bewitched by the Abyss cult. Plus, it's normal to have Abyss power on your body as you once swallowed poisonous blood during a battle with the demon dragon Durin. Ying will become familiar with the power of the Abyss, and things will become somewhat eerie. Let's find a chance to confirm. Lin Fan glanced at Ying without leaving a trace. Then he turned his gaze to the empty ground where Twalin had been lying before. I saw a dark red crystal emitting an ominous aura suspended in mid-air. Lin Fan immediately had an idea in his heart and pretended to have just discovered it. Ying and Paimon, who were somewhat surprised, said, Twalin seems to have left something behind. Upon hearing this statement, Ying and Paimon both immediately regained their senses and looked together at the place where Tevelin had been lying before. It seems like a crystal. Paimon said with some uncertainty, let's go and take a look. At the moment she saw the crystal, a poetic story about dragons liking treasures immediately came to her mind. She couldn't help but think, could this crystal be the treasure of Tevelin? Regarding Paimon's proposal, Ying didn't say anything, but walked directly towards the crystallization. Because she felt a familiar aura from this crystal. After seeing Ying's reaction, Lin Fan's eyebrows furrowed and his unease deepened a bit. Because at this moment, Ying's performance is all about explaining. There is a high probability that the idea he guessed before is true. However, before obtaining a definite answer, he decided to observe again. Immediately, he followed Ying and Paimon calmly and walked to the crystal left by Tevelin. This dark red light looks very dangerous at first glance. I thought it was the treasure left by Tevelin, so I was so happy. Humph. After circling around the crystal, Paimon stomped his foot and said somewhat disdainfully. It seems that the story in poetry that dragons love treasures is indeed false. Ha ha ha, don't be discouraged, there will be more treasures waiting for you and Ying to discover in the future. Although Lin Fan had a heavy heart, he was also amused after hearing Paimon's words. He never expected that Paimon's financial fanaticism would awaken so early. After hesitating for a while, Ying directly reached out and grabbed the crystal that emitted an ominous aura. Be careful. Seeing Ying's movements, Paimon was frightened and quickly spoke up to remind him. However, after grasping the crystal, Ying did not experience any changes. Hey! Is this crystal harmless? Paimon said incredulously. She always thought that this red color was dangerous and ominous, and touching it would definitely cause trouble. Why is Ying holding on to the crystal now without anything happening? Not only Paimon, but also Ying himself, who was holding the crystal, was somewhat puzzled. Before, she just felt a familiar aura in this crystal. But after truly holding it in her hand, she didn't have any special feelings. This makes her wonder if she felt wrong before. Lin Fan frowned and looked at the scene, pondering for a moment before speaking. Ying, I want to ask you a question. This issue is particularly important, it concerns you, me, your brother, Paimon, and everyone in this world. So I hope you can answer me honestly. When Lin Fan said these words, his face was very solemn as he looked straight into Ying's eyes. There is no exaggeration in his words. Because this incident is indeed related to the future of the entire world. Upon hearing these words, Paimon and Ying, who were already somewhat confused, became even more confused. Aren't you talking about crystallization? Why did you suddenly ask such a serious question? And it's just the answer to a question. Is it really as terrifying as Lin Fan said? Surprisingly, it also concerns the survival of the world. You can ask, as long as there is an answer, I will tell you the truth. Ying hesitated for a moment and then said firmly. Although she hasn't been spending much time with Lin Fan. But she still has some understanding of the other person's personality during this period. The question that can make him ask so seriously is probably not simple. Paimon was also frightened by the solemn demeanor of the two of them and dared not say anything more for a moment. She was just curious, what exactly was the question Lin Fan wanted to ask? After receiving a definite answer from Ying, Lin Fan pondered over the wording and asked. Do you feel the power of the past being restored when you hold on to this crystal? After asking this question, Lin Fan's heart also hung in suspense, holding his breath and waiting for Ying's answer. No wonder he was so nervous, mainly because Ying's answer was too crucial. If Ying says he hasn't regained his strength, it's purely because he's overthinking. But if Ying really is restoring her strength, then the fun and trouble will be huge. Upon hearing these words, Ying was initially somewhat puzzled. But seeing that Lin Fan didn't seem to be joking, she also became concerned about this issue. She immediately closed her eyes and carefully felt if there was any change in her body. 1 second, 2 seconds after a moment, when Ying opened her eyes again, a hint of surprise flashed in them. Because after a careful examination and feeling just now, she found that the power that had been sealed by the maintainer of the heavenly principle was slowly recovering when she grasped this crystal. My strength is indeed recovering, although slow and weak, it is indeed recovering. Do you know anything? Ying suppressed her shock and looked at Lin Fan with some disbelief, asking. She has come to understand now. Lin Fan definitely knows something, otherwise he wouldn't have asked such an inexplicable question. And this concerns her power to be sealed, as well as the future of this world. This made her feel an ominous premonition in her heart. Upon hearing this answer, Lin Fan's face turned extremely ugly. The eyebrows furrowed directly into a Sichuan-shaped shape. The reason why he would lose his composure due to Ying's answer is because Ying and her brother, although they are also outsiders. But unlike him, who traveled directly to Tivat, Ying and her brother have traveled to other worlds and gained powerful power in them. According to the information in his memory, although during the heyday of Ying, he could not defeat the maintainer of the heavenly principle. But Ying and her brother, together, can launch an attack on the maintainers of the heavenly principle. And Tivat's combat power can be divided into 7 levels according to his memory. The first tier includes the first throne and its 4 shadows, as well as the second throne, which can fight against the first throne. The maintainer of the heavenly principle is one of the 4 shadows of the first throne. The Red Moon Goddess, also known as one of the March goddesses by places such as Liyue and Inazumi. Symbolizing the cup of emptiness, the ruler of space, Asmod. P.S. The new book set sail, please ask for flowers, tickets, and tips. Thank you, handsome and wealthy readers. Chapter 9. The Tree of Unreal Numbers, the Sea of Quantum, People Have. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ying and her brother, together, can compete with such a powerful deity. Although it was only a momentary defeat, it did not cause substantial harm to the other party. But in Lin Fan's opinion, this power is no less powerful than those top demon gods in the second tier of combat power and the current 7 rulers of the mortal world. So, how did such a powerful force come about? This is the real reason why he feels scalp tingling from Ying's answer. Due to the issue with the power of the screen, he suddenly remembered something that had been covered in dust for a long time. The Genshin Impact world exists in the Tree of Imaginary Numbers/Sea of Quantum. The Tree of Imaginary Numbers can be simply understood as the world tree, and each branch is a world. The Sea of Quantum is the source of nutrition for the Tree of Unreal Numbers. The Tree of Unreal Numbers develops and expands itself by absorbing the energy of the Sea of Quantum, giving rise to more worlds. And if some worlds on the Tree of Unreal Numbers are on the brink of destruction or civilizations gradually wither, it will fall from the tree and transform from a world with normal barriers to a fragile world bubble. When falling from a tree, one will also be attacked by chaotic creatures from the imaginary space. If there is no way to establish a new connection with the Tree of Imaginary Numbers, the world bubble will completely fall into the Sea of Quantum, until it is decomposed into a part of the Quantum Sea. Then it is absorbed by the Tree of Unreal Numbers to create more new worlds. The Tree of Imaginary Numbers and the Sea of Quantum Numbers maintain a complementary and entangled state. In this system, the energy used is generally referred to as the collapse energy. Alternatively, both imaginary energy and quantum energy are essentially the same type of energy. If used well, it can create things and benefit all beings, but if not used well, it will only harm others and oneself, and the world will be destroyed. The abyssal force and elemental force, not the 7 elemental forces, in the Tivat population. The maximum probability is just a local term for collapse energy. Ying can restore strength by absorbing the power of the abyss. So the power she used before is likely to be the collapse energy. Perhaps it is precisely because the power of the abyss and the power of the elements are both destructive energies. So the screen can freely drive any elemental force without the help of the divine eye. And Lin Fan is so nervous because the Tree of Imaginary Numbers has a filtering mechanism. P.S. The cocoon of the end of the world is a bit bookish, so the original screening mechanism of the imaginary tree is used. There's really big trouble now. No wonder the original people reversed destruction and even enveloped the world with eggshells. After a moment of contemplation, Lin Fan couldn't help but let out a long sigh, his tone filled with a sense of powerlessness. At this moment, he no longer had the same energy as when he had just crossed to Tivat. I originally planned to travel around various countries, while promoting elves and gradually strengthening myself. By the way, you can also meet those people and things that you have always wanted to see and experience. But now that he has learned Ying's answer, he feels like a light shining on his back and has no mood at all. Can you speak more clearly, Lin Fan? You're talking about this big trouble, primitive people, eggshell-wrapped world, and so on, who knows? Paimon, who had never dared to speak, couldn't hold back any longer and stomped his foot angrily, saying. Just now, during the conversation between Lin Fan and Ying, she was stunned and didn't understand a single word. After a question, one person became very excited and the other became very silent. You two put this acting aside, right? Can the riddle person get out of Tivat? Lin Fan, do you mean that the power I'm using is a big trouble? And what you said about eggshells wrapping the world, is it difficult? Ying also came back to her senses and asked with an incredulous expression on her face. Why doesn't she know what's causing trouble with the power she used before? Let the troubles caused by power be temporarily ignored. For the eggshell-wrapped world that Lin Fan mentioned, she had some speculations in an instant. Is it difficult? Tivat is a world isolated from the universe. Seeing that the two were very curious, Lin Fan thought for a moment and decided to reveal some information. The big trouble I mentioned before was due to the power of Ying and the power of Abyss, but there's actually no difference. If you let others know that the power you use shares the same origin as the Abyss, it may only add to the trouble. So if anyone asks about it in the future, just say you can purify the power of the Abyss. As for other matters, I'm sorry I can't tell you now. The more you know now, the greater the danger. Lin Fan solemnly explained to the two of them. Now they are all too weak, knowing too much may not necessarily be a good thing. The power of Ying is actually homologous with the Abyss. Upon hearing Lin Fan's explanation, Paimon was also completely taken aback. Now she can understand why Lin Fan would say this is a big trouble. What is this? Abyss. Ying temporarily suppressed the swirling thoughts in her mind and asked curiously. If only Lin Fan said that the power of the Abyss was troublesome, it would be enough. Even Paimon said the same. I'm afraid this abyssal power doesn't have a very good reputation in the Tivat continent. Abyssal power is the power used by members of the Abyssal Order. The members of the Abyss cult are all villains, those who commit all kinds of evil. Although I don't know why Ying you used the power of the Abyss. But you should listen to Lin Fan and never expose that your strength and Abyss are the same. Seeing that Ying was unaware of the power of the Abyss, Paimon quickly spoke up and explained. Finally, a very serious reminder was given. If Ying is caught, she will have nowhere to go. She doesn't want to do this. Is that so? Listening to Paimon's explanation, Ying probably understood. After figuring out the issue of power, she couldn't help but take a deep look at Lin Fan. Lin Fan's previous words were enough to deceive innocent guys like Paimon. She could feel that the other party clearly knew more and more secretive things. But perhaps as Lin Fan said, knowing too much can actually lead to danger. So she decided to suppress her curiosity first, as she could always find opportunities to learn more in the future. At the same time, this incident also surprised her a little. The erudition and knowledge revealed by Lin Fan. If there is anything she doesn't understand in the future, it's definitely right to contact Lin Fan. You know everything, it's done. Alright, let's continue on the road. If we delay for a while longer, we might have to spend the night in the forest today. Seeing that the two of them stopped questioning, Lin Fan couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief and immediately spoke up. Ying and Paimon had no objections to this either. After Ying collected the crystals, the three of them continued on their journey. As Lin Fan walked, he was also contemplating the future. In fact, after learning that the screen is most likely to be damaged, a more terrifying idea came to his mind, but he didn't say it. And he himself is too daring to continue thinking. Because if this idea is also true, then Tivat is really hopeless. Maybe he didn't cross over to popularize elves, but rather crossed over and died. And this terrifying idea is that once a certain Joy Star God climbed onto a tree branch called the Tree of Existence PS. The new book set sail, please ask for flowers, tickets, and tips. Thank you, handsome and wealthy readers. Chapter 10. The Earth is the Sky, found by Canria. You are listening at novelfull.audio. There were no further forks in the subsequent journey. Before long, Lin Fan and his companions walked out of the Whispering Forest under the guidance of Paimon. Lin Fan also took advantage of this time to figure out some things that had previously troubled him. Before that, he had always thought that Genshin Impact was a normal world, and that Tivat was also a normal continent. It's just that the first throne, Fanes, used an eggshell to isolate the sea of quantum and the erosion of collapse. But now, upon careful consideration, he realized that things didn't seem to be that simple. Maybe Tivat is actually a continent within the planet. The first throne, Phanes, is actually separated by an eggshell between the mantle layer and the surface. And the original surface of the planet is afraid that it has long been destroyed and eroded, making it impossible to survive. In this way, it can also explain things like the false sky and the spiral of the deep realm. And why Canria believes that the underground is the abyss and the true starry sky. Bad, the Canrian found the true Genshin Impact. Because the outside world is no longer able to survive, that's why I'm living inside the planet. The first throne wants to continue humanity's spark, but forgets that humanity will never stop exploring. So it seems that the maintainer of heavenly principles is the true good person. After thinking about these things, Lin Fan's expression changed several times, and finally couldn't help but let out a long sigh. This is too unsolvable. One side hopes that humans can live honestly in protected areas. There are all shattered beasts, bleeding dogs, outside, stop it, I can. But some ancient civilizations, due to the increasing development of technology, had the idea of exploring the starry sky. After discovering that the starry sky above was actually fake, the idea of exploring underground arose. The deeper you dig underground, the closer you get to the surface, and naturally, the closer you get to the abyss. The closer you get to the abyss, the more determined you are in your desire to dig deeper into the depths of Canria and some ancient civilizations. Because the abyss is actually the starry sky. It is also a quantum sea where countless world bubbles, world wreckage, and worlds that have just fallen from trees coexist. If there is a quantum sea outside the Earth's surface. I'm really impressed. You've done all the bad things, MHY. After thinking about this, Lin Fan felt his entire brain explode and his scalp tingle. If there is a quantum sea outside the Earth's surface. This means that Tivat has fallen from the tree of imaginary numbers and become a member of the Sea of Quantum. It was only because the first throne found its anchor that Tivat was secured. Let Tivat exist in the form of a planet in the Sea of Quantum to this day. It's just that a long time has passed, and the erosion of the abyss, coupled with the maintainers of the heavenly principles, are dying. This means that perhaps in no time, the downfall of Tivat will come. If he thinks about it this way, he will have a deeper understanding of the reversal and destruction of the first throne. I'm really numb. After Lin Fan regained his senses, he couldn't help but sigh, what kind of thing is this? He discovered that the power of the abyss was truly poisonous. After encountering the remaining abyssal power of Tevelin, one thing after another broke through, leaving people numb. But after sorting out these things, he was actually relieved. The thing that people fear the most is often the unknown. As long as you know what you are going to face and the current situation, you will always find a solution in the future. He doesn't have the ability to solve this big problem now, but he can still achieve it by burying his head in development. In the end, even if things don't go well, you still need to have the power to run with friends. Is this? After recovering from his contemplation, Lin Fan realized that there was actually an extra person in front of him. He also knows this person, Amber, the best and only tea-pouring knight in Mond City. Moreover, Amber chatted very enthusiastically with Ying and Paimon, which made him a bit curious. When did Amber come? Why didn't he notice? Have you finished thinking about everything? Paimon snorted as he saw Lin Fan finally come to his senses. I just called you for a while and you didn't pay attention to anyone. Those who didn't know thought you were standing and sleeping. When I first met Amber, she called Lin Fan for a while, but the other party didn't respond. If it weren't for Ying saying that Lin Fan was thinking, she might have punched him a few times. Hahaha, don't be angry, I'll treat you to a big meal when it's Mond. I was a bit lost in thought just now, I'm really sorry. Listening to Paimon's words, Lin Fan could only chuckle lightly and said with some embarrassment. He never expected that something could be as settled as TM. Lin Fan, this is Mond's Scout Knight Amber. Ying smiled and nodded, not mentioning what had just happened, but instead introducing Amber. After introducing each other. What were you talking about just now? Lin Fan asked curiously. Just now, Amber said that there are more and more people in the nearby hills, and she needs to go clean up. Ying and I are going together. Do you want to come? Seeing that Lin Fan was somewhat curious, Paimon briefly recounted what had just happened. Actually, she wants to bring Lin Fan up and become a bodyguard and a mobile library. Clean up the people of Chocho. Forget it, you can go. I will go to the city in advance to do some errands and pick up some more. Later, I will also treat Paimon to a big meal. Without hesitation, Lin Fan rejected the proposal from Paimon. With the strength of Ying and Amber, it is completely easy to clean up some of the Chocho people. He has this time to watch the scenery as a follower, so why not go find Grandpa Lu to withdraw some money? Then remember to take more Mora. Paimon's eyes lit up as he listened to the feast. What kind of bodyguards or mobile libraries are not important in front of big meals? The four of them immediately separated temporarily. Ying, Anbai, and Paimon went to clean up the people of Chocho, while Lin Fan walked towards the nearby city of Mond. When you reach the bridge that spans across the fruit wine lake and connects to the gate of Mond City. Looking at a group of pigeons on the bridge, Lin Fan reflexively wanted the big-toothed fox to roll. Then it was discovered that in order not to be caught as invaders by the yet unfamiliar Westwind Knights, he had already retrieved the big-toothed beaver into the Pokémon ball. In the end, he could only watch the group of pigeons swaggering away in front of him. Not to mention, Mond City is really big. Mond is so big, I don't know how spectacular Happy Hometown would be. After glancing at the magnificent walls of Mond City, Lin Fan couldn't help but sigh. If Mond City in the game is a place that doesn't seem very big. At that moment, the city of Mond in front of him was a huge city-state covering an extremely large area. The city wall built with bricks and stones is at least over 20 meters high, let alone the length of the side that cannot be seen at a glance. Through the towering city walls, one can also see the spires of some buildings within the city. It can only be said that he is truly Tivat, both backward and advanced. It is truly amazing. After being questioned by the gatekeeper, Lin Fan smoothly entered the city of Mond. After admiring the bustling main street, he headed towards the gift tavern of the angel he had heard from the gatekeeper. P.S. The new book set sale, please ask for flowers, tickets, and tips. Thank you, handsome and wealthy readers.